Okay, the topic that we gave for tonight is how to pray. And like many things in life, you can only understand how to do something if you know what you're doing. What you're doing includes what's the purpose, and what means are allotted for the purpose, what counts as more successful outcome or less successful outcome. So we'll have to start with a description of what prayer is, and then we'll be able from that to see what practical applications we can make to the process of prayer. Now, first, a matter of definition. In strict Jewish law, the word prayer, or tefillah in Hebrew, refers only to the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, the silent prayer said with your feet together, facing the next holiest place. All the rest of the concept of the Siddur, which is called a prayer book. By the way, Siddur in Hebrew is not prayer book. Siddur is organizer, like a daily organizer, that organizes lots of things that you do. It has lots of different performances in it, and it's organized. Prayer is just the Shemona Esrei. So I'm going to talk about that. And the Shemona Esrei breaks up into three parts. The first is praise of God. The second is petition. And the third is gratitude, thanksgiving. Even though the last blessing is not gratitude and thanksgiving, but it's more petition, that has a special reason. We may get to that or may not get to that. But traditionally, that's the way the prayer breaks up. First praise, then petition, and then gratitude. Now, the purpose of prayer is the petition. That's why you come before God, to ask for things. Praise and gratitude are sensitivities built into the performance. You're standing before the creator of the universe. You're not reciting words in Persian that are supposed to unlock some encrypted code so as to activate a computer program. These are words that you are speaking to the creator, and you're speaking them in the context of a relationship, an interaction which has a particular purpose. The same with gratitude at the end. So the praise and gratitude are sensitivities built into the interpersonal interaction of coming before him to present petition. But the purpose of prayer is petition. And indeed, when you find cases of prayer, let's say the Tanakh, very often they are just petition. They're it's initiated by praise, and they aren't followed by gratitude. They simply are, please give me X. So really, the heart of prayer is petition. And that's where we have to start. What does it mean to make a petition? What different kinds of petitions are possible? Are they all appropriate from a Jewish point of view? And then what would be implied about how we should pray based on the kind of petition that we are presenting. Now, I'm going to give three examples of petition, three different types of petition, and then we just distinguish them and have them on the table to talk about, and then we'll talk about their status. One would be, I want X. But I know from experience, and I know from religious teaching, that I can't get X on my own. I'm not running the world. So, since God, so to speak, has the keys to the warehouse, and he's the one who dispenses the goodies, I'm asking him, because there seems to be a relevant strategy to employ to get what I want. The petition is completely selfish. My goal is to get for me what I want to have for me. But this is how you get it. The second level is where I've dedicated myself to serving God. That's what my life is about. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. But there are things in the world that I need, or at least I believe I need, experience teaches me that I need, to be able to serve him well or to serve him better than I'm presently serving him. For example, if I'm at home with 103 Fahrenheit degree temperature, fever, then I'm not going to be able to go to the Beit Knesset to pray. I'm not going to be able to go to the yeshiva, learn and teach Torah. Won't be able to interact with my family in the ways that are appropriate for a parent and a grandparent and a great-grandparent. And won't be able to help people who are in need. I'm going to be in bed. I'm going to be sick in bed. So here the petition would be, God, please make me healthy so I can do these various things which you have told me you want me to do. What I ask for is means to be able to serve him better. There's a third area of petition. Now, the first two I think are common. People do employ them from time to time. They're certainly not out of human reach. The third is idealistic. I'm mentioning it to have a kind of picture from one end to the other. I'm not necessarily saying that we should strive for this, but one needs to know that it's possible. The third level looks at the world as much as a human being can from God's point of view and identifies with what he wants for the world. And then I ask for something which will make the world into the kind of world that he wants it to be, because I want him to have what he wants. I'll give you an example. This is a story that was told to me by a good friend of mine when I was, I think, 6 years old or 8 years old. I asked him, we lived in adjacent houses, and I asked him if he wanted to play on Sunday. And he said to me, I wish I could play with you. I enjoy playing with you, but my father thinks that he has to take me out on an adventure every Sunday morning, and I hate to disappoint him. Now, don't make a mistake. He enjoyed going with his father. His father had good ideas, and he did have adventures. In this particular case, he would have preferred to play with me. But he didn't want to disappoint his father. So he's going to get pleasure out of it, but the reason he's going to go to get the pleasure out of it is because his father wants to do that. His father wants to give him the pleasure. That's the idea of identifying with the outlook of the other party. Another example of this is the Nefesh Chaim, who is describing what it means to be afraid to sin. Yiras Chet. And he says, you're afraid of the punishment? That's a fear, all right, but that's not real Yiras Chet. You're afraid of damaging your soul? That is a consequence of committing transgressions, but that's not real Yiras Chet. You're afraid of damaging your relationship with God? It's also a consequence, but that's not what the real Yiras Chet. The real Yiras Chet is this, that when you do something wrong, the result is that it brings pain to God. And the worst is, if you deserve a punishment, you are the cause of God having to punish his child. You're causing the parent to have to punish his child. There's nothing more painful than that. And so you should think, I can't do that. I can't bring that on God, so to speak. Bring it on the Shekhinah, is the way we would say it. Let me try to make this vivid for you. There are these 2-for-1 bacon cheeseburgers. But now, every bite of the bacon cheeseburger is connected by an electrical connection to an 18-month-old child, and gives that child a jolt of electricity, a painful jolt of electricity. Can you bite into the cheeseburger and enjoy it, savor it, knowing that every bite is going to communicate pain to an 18-month-old child? Not if you're human. Not if you're not a psychopath. Not if you're normal, you couldn't enjoy that. So here, what you're supposed to understand vividly is that Imo and Yeshivat Torah, the Kodesh Baruch Hu identifies with us, and that every transgression brings pain to the Shekhinah. And to think, I can't do that. I can't bring pain to the Shekhinah. So that you're looking at the world from God's point of view, and you ask what the consequences are for God, and you can't bring yourself to do it. This would be the same thing for prayer. If I don't have X, what does that mean to God that I don't have X? Well, if I'm in pain, not having X, The verse says, Imo anochi b'tzara. God says, I'm with you in your pain. So if I'm in pain, he's in pain. Well, I don't want him to be in pain. That's a very idealistic level of petition. Okay, now let's just, sorry.
Would praying for someone else on someone else's behalf be similar in a sense to this third level that you mentioned?
Let me think about that for a second. Would praying for somebody else be similar to this third level? I guess it would depend upon the psychology of the person doing the praying. Now, let me think how it would work. It's a good question, and the association is a natural association. I'm not puzzling because there's something objectionable here. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how it would work. I'll tell you what's giving me pause. I'm not able to work it out right away. What's giving me pause is this. On the basis of identification, I think you're right. It's possible to identify with somebody else. I was talking about identifying with God and seeing from his point of view. It is possible to identify with other people and see things from their point of view. But the reasons for making the identification aren't the same. The one is that you are identifying with the creator of the universe, and the other is you're identifying with a peer, so to speak. Let me make this vivid. My first wife told me, I think even before we were married, everybody has his own picture of the world. And a key question to ask a person is, who is in the center of your picture? And there are only two candidates. One is God, and one is me. Those are the two candidates. Right? Now, when you put God in the center of the picture, that means everything else in the picture gets in because God puts it there. I exist only as an object of divine concern, of divine investment. So I've completely subsumed myself to his reality. That's the reason why I would identify with it. Can't say that about my peer, with whom I could also identify, but not for that reason. So I think that's going to influence the identification also. So I'm a little cautious about making a real equation. But in general terms, I think you're right. The idea of identifying with the other definitely applies to other people. So I think you're right. Yeah.
On a practical level, because what you're saying is very resonating with how I feel. But I just, on a practical level, I sometimes do things, and if I make a mistake, I feel almost as if I disappointed Hashem. I disappointed Hashem, from my mistake, from choosing me and not Hashem in that moment. I'm very glad that I noticed the mistake, and I am to next time not do it. But from a place of coming from a circular background, I've had to change a lot of personal habits and a lot of things that I've seen that are for me and not for Hashem. So while the process, because we're not perfect and we were never built perfect. So my question is, how do I practically improve myself without always, I guess, punishing myself for those mistakes?
Okay, look, this is an important question, and it deserves a good chunk of time to get to the bottom of it, but it's not part of tonight's topic. There is a topic for tonight. It's called How to Pray. Now, I have an open Q&A every Monday night from 8:30 to 9:30. You can ask any question that you want. So I would say save it for next Monday. It's one thing to do, and maybe I'll talk about that, something like that along the in the next couple of weeks for an evening lecture. But it's not directly related to what I'm trying to accomplish tonight. So let's see. We have these three types of petition on the table. Now let's first of all ask about validity. Let's start with the first one. Totally selfish petition. I want X for me because I'm going to enjoy it, but God's running the world, so I'm asking him, is there any spiritual value in that petition? Totally selfish.
Can be.
Sure. Because I'm acknowledging that God is running the world. That's not zero. Lots of people want things they don't dream of asking God. They're either atheists or they haven't thought about it or just thinking of making enough money to buy it. Look at it from God's point of view. Is there anything in this performance that God would want to reinforce? Perhaps sometimes reward so as to preserve and reinforce this performance? I think so. Because acknowledging God's existence and God's providence and God's control is not nothing. So this is a valid petition. Person who asks God in this way for things can say he has done the mitzvah of prayer. Maybe not on the highest level, maybe it's childish, maybe it's humanly superficial, but it's the job. Now, a person who does that, what would he have to build into his prayer? Well, he would have to build into his prayer a proper respect. After all, he's asking. You're asking means by asking you want to improve the probability that you will get it. If you thought that your petition would have no effect on the probability of getting what you're asking for, you wouldn't do it. It would be absurd. And the Torah never requires us to do something absurd. Never. By the way, absurd is not equal to, I don't know the reason. I don't know the reason doesn't make it absurd. Absurd means I have positive reason and understanding to say that it's worthless. This is not just a question of ignorance. So I have to. So now, what kind of interaction would there be that would give my petition a hope of success, especially since the petition is completely selfish? And I think there, the praise beforehand and the gratitude afterwards play a big role. In praise, you express whatever it is that you understand about who God is, what God is, who you are, and how you stand in relationship to God. And thanksgiving, those show that you have a sensitivity to who you're speaking of, and you have an appreciation for the things that he has done for you. Those are all things which will be important to the giver to see in your relationship with him. This would be some of the things that would be important to do in the context of making the petition. Yeah.
So is the point of it, so to speak, cozy up with God, or is it for the one who's making the petition's behalf, so he appreciates what God's doing? Yeah.
Why is it either or? Why can't it be both? I know you meant to belittle it by using a negative phrase, but what would you say to a child who asks his father and cozy up to his father, and his father has to decide whether to give him something or not? If the father feels that the child appreciates the father, loves the father, and feels happy with the father, that's something which motivates the father to give to his son.
Surely the point of the father is to sort of soften.
Surely what? Sorry.
The point of praising.
Yes.
Would seemingly, for example, with the king, that it's to soften the king up, so he takes your side of view. Is that what this is taking point of?
First of all, I wouldn't say that. Surely the point of praising is to soften him up. I wouldn't say that. Maybe some people who are weak-minded and whose motivation is very low level, but on a more normal person or a person with high character, he's not capable of being softened up, and if the petitioner knows that, can't be his. No, I think it's more a question of showing appreciation. Let's say, I know who I'm talking to. There's a famous Hasidic parable. The king was driving through a backward area of the country, and people were poor farmers, and he came with a chariot and other horsemen and trumpeters and so forth and so on. As the chariot goes by, a kid, let's say an 8-year-old, picks up a clod of dirt and throws it at the chariot. Okay, the soldiers catch him, and they say to the king, "We'll string him up from the nearest tree." King says, "No, put him in the chariot with me." Okay, put him in the chariot with him, goes home to the castle, give him a room in the castle. Okay, And then every morning when I sit on the throne, bring him into the throne room. Okay, I mean, you're the king, but very peculiar way to deal with a kid who throws dirt at the carriage. After a month, the kid's sitting there one morning, the king's on the throne, and he bursts into tears. What's wrong? I said, listen, I threw that dirt at the chariot because I felt we're poor, we work hard, we pay taxes to the king, and he lives like a clown with all this money just enjoying himself. But sitting here in the throne room, I see that war and peace and the economy and controlling crime and all of it is under the control of the king. The whole kingdom's success depends upon what he does. I realize now that he's not just someone who's living off the riches of the peasants who are working. He makes the whole organization possible. He makes the whole country possible. So I feel terrible about what I did. The king turned to the soldiers and said, isn't that better than stringing him up from a tree? He appreciates. So praise can be an expression of appreciation. I know who I'm talking to. I know the relationship that we're standing in, and it's in the context of that knowledge of the relationship that I'm asking. By the way, I'm just going to insert this because it's important for people to know, and I think there's a lot of misinformation about this. Praise is not subjective, it's objective. Praise is not when you express how you feel about something. It inspires me, it surprises me, it makes me feel awe. That's not what praise is. Praise is something that's objective. You can say something in praise of something and be wrong. The praise can be incorrect, factually incorrect. So praise is an expression of fact, and of course it could be wrong. It could be incorrect, or it could be correct. An example to see this, I'm not going to do the whole philosophy. This is John Stuart Mill. I think he had a great insight here. Imagine a person who's never seen basketball. Never seen basketball. Yeah, but I grew up in the wilds of this Australian desert. Okay, I'm going to show you something. So you take him down to the court, for a professional game. And they're warming up. And he suddenly grabs his sleeve and says, wow, did you see that? What a great shot. He jumped into the air. While he was in the air, he threw the ball through the hoop. What an amazing, great shot. He shot a jump shot from the foul line. Thanks a lot. Right? What do you say to him? You're wrong. That wasn't a great shot. High school kids can do that. Great isn't common. If it's common, it's not great. To call it great is wrong. It's a mistake. It's false. So praise is not just a matter of expressing how you feel. There are objective standards for praise. So now, when I give praise of God, and by the way, almost all of the words in the prayers that we use are not words that were made up. They're words that come from the Holy Bible. Most of them are words from prophets, which means that God dictated those words. So these words were culled into paragraphs which express real information about who God is. And I say, I'm coming before you. Not only do I want you to know that I know, but I want my petition to be in the context of these ideas. It's these ideas which create my mental set from which I ask. I think that's what's going on. It's not a question of softening him up. Okay, so here's a kind of petition which should be informed by the praise and by the gratitude, and that would give it its so to speak, its interpersonal character in the act of petition. Now, if you go to the second step, you have a much higher reality. Here's a person, by the way, in terms of my first wife's picture, I'm in the center. I'm in the center. And and the warehouse is over there, and God's over there, and he's got the keys. So, okay, please open the door so I can get what I need, so I can have it for myself, thank you. Now, in the second picture, sorry.
That picture you just mentioned about you being in the center versus God being in the center. So there might be the center in terms of whose well-being I care about. But there's also the center in terms of in whose hands is the power. So that example you just mentioned, about the first level, the person who's just praying for himself, at least he's putting God in the center in terms of power.
Okay,
Well-being.
okay, you're right. I mean, you could paint pictures as you like, and you could do them geographically or temporally, or you could do them in terms of artistic capabilities and so on and so on. My wife's point was of value. You know, what's the item of the intrinsically greatest value, and the source of value for everything else. Now, in the second level, where I've dedicated myself to serving him, now it gets a little more subtle. Well, if I'm serving him, then he's in the center of the picture. But the question is, where am I? So I'm not in the center, but I'm there on my own. I acknowledge him. I choose to serve him. My choosing to serve him makes me important. It gives me my value. So although he's in the center, he is the one that determines value, and he determines what value is important for me. I am the one who acts on that determination. I'm the one who realizes the potential. Unlike the top level, which I described as God is in the center of the picture, and I'm there only as an object of his concern. It's only because he's concerned with me that I exist. That's a much more profound distinction between the center and the rest. In the middle level, God is in the center. He's the source of all value, but I exist. In other words, for example, let's suppose I serve him, and God, he doesn't even know. I serve him in ways he doesn't know. He didn't command me. I figured them out for myself. That still would be worthwhile doing. I would still have been a success. It's not dependent upon his concern, his knowledge, his interaction. It's just that that's where all the value is. And if I make an effort to win a war, in secret, nobody knows about it. I know I did the right thing. I know what I did is important. And it is important without anybody knowing about it. So this is a hybrid case. It's a middle case. But it's a very valuable case. To get to the point where you live in order to do what God wants done is a very valuable position to be in. And here, it's going to affect how you present the petition. When you ask for X, you have to imagine, you go into the throne room and see God on the throne, so to speak. You don't go in alone. You're accompanied by a helpful, friendly angel who stands at your right side. At any point in time, he can tap you on the shoulder and say, "Why do you want that?" And you need to have an answer ready. And the answer better be, because if I have it, I'll be able to serve God better. And in detail, exactly how and why. And how do you know you're right? So you think out beforehand, what am I going to ask for? Well, I'm going to ask for the things that I really want. What do I really want? I really want to be a successful servant of God. That's what I want to accomplish. Well then, when you come and ask, you're asking for means by which you can improve your service of God. So that requires a lot of preparation, a lot of introspection, a lot of self-examination. After all, you have to be able to predict when you get what you're asking for, will it really help you serve God or will it not? Maybe you're fooling yourself or just ignorant. You think that it will help you, but it will corrupt you in certain ways. So it requires a lot of preparation to make this kind of petition in a way that reflects what it is you're asking for. Now, this level is implied in a great deal of traditional material on the nature of prayer, about which I'll just mention a few examples. Some of you are aware that this order of prayer is constructed to be parallel to the order of the sacrifices. There are 3 daily prayers because there's the morning sacrifice, afternoon sacrifice, and in the evening you could burn up the remainders of the day's sacrifices so that part of the service went on all night as well. Shabbos you have an extra prayer called Musaf because of an extra sacrifice called Musaf. The times of the prayers are coordinated with the times in which the sacrifices were offered. Why is that? Why did they do that? Where did they get the idea to do that? Now, don't be don't be fooled by what some people will say, especially academics. Well, when the first temple was destroyed and had no way to serve God, they invented prayer to replace the missing sacrifices. First of all, in the Tanakh, for the 800 years before the end of the first temple, there were prayers. Not organized prayers, but the prayer that did go on. Second of all, our organization of prayer was invented by the men of the Great Assembly who lived at the beginning of the Second Temple. And this structure of prayer went along side by side with the sacrifices for 420 years. Further, when the Gemara discusses this, the phraseology in the Gemara is Tfilos kineged kabonos tiknu. Prayers were established parallel to, in correspondence with the sacrifices, not in place of the sacrifices. Now, for the aficionados who know that in the Shulchan Aruch it does say bimkom, in place of, that's very nice, good that you know that, but you have to take into account the fact that in the Gemara it doesn't say that, which means the author of the Shulchan Aruch consciously changed the formulation. So you have to ask why he changed it. Because keneged means one thing and bimkom means something else. I will try to explain that. So let's do a little bit of biblical history. Where do we find references to the idea that prayer and sacrifices are related to one another? Now, one answer is in a song that's very popular, made the verses of Isaiah very popular. V'haviosim el har kodshi, simachtim beveis tilasi, osehem v'zivchehem l'rotzon mizbechi, ki beisi beis tefillah yikarei l'chol ha'amim. Let's try this out. I will bring them to my holy mountain, and I will cause them to rejoice in my house of prayer. Their sacrifices shall be pleasing to me on the altar, because my house is a house of prayer for all peoples. Hello, what's going on here? House of prayer, sacrifices, house of prayer, in one verse. And that's Isaiah. So that means the idea of connecting prayer with sacrifices antedates the men of the Great Assembly who made the correspondence. But it's much worse than that, or much better than that. Go back to Solomon when he built the temple. First few chapters of the first book of Kings. Solomon gives a dedication to the temple that he created. You look at that dedication, the only activity associated with the temple and that dedication is prayer. If that's all you had, you wouldn't know there were sacrifices there. You think of the temple as the place of sacrifices, that's true but trivial. It's really a house of prayer. That's its identity. And in the house of prayer, you offer sacrifices. What that tells you is that there's a very intimate connection, a very intimate relationship between prayer and sacrifices. Now, what the rabbis did is they said the following. I have to explain the concept, but I'm just talking now structurally. They said, okay, it's called a house of prayer, and sacrifices are involved there. You, Reuven Schwartz, you live in Tveria. Are you represented in the temple? And Reuven Schwartz says, sure. Once a year in Adar, I pay my half shekel. I put it into the common pot, so that when January 16th, and I sleep until noon, but the Kohanim are offering the sacrifice, and I paid for those sacrifices, so my name is inscribed in the sacrifice, I'm definitely there. The rabbi said, that's not enough. That's not enough. The sacrifices and prayer are intimately linked, so that when the sacrifices are being performed, we want Jews to be praying at the same time, because it's an action of national sacrifice. Not everyone is a Kohen. Not everyone can offer the sacrifices in the temple. In the temple, there were groups of non-Kohanim who stood there and said psalms to participate in the activity of the temple as non-Kohanim. Chazal said, we're going to spread this out now. Everybody, no sleeping till noon. Everybody is going to participate in this action of national sacrifice. Prayer is a kind of sacrifice. And everybody's involved, each in his own way. Now, how can prayer be an act of sacrifice? In particular, if, as I told you, that prayer, this essence of prayer is petition, In petition, you're asking God to give something to you for whatever purpose, but you're asking to give it to you. The flow in prayer is from God to you. In sacrifices, the flow is from us to God. We take the animals that we have and we offer them to God. It sounds like the subject of flow in prayer is from God to us. The subject of flow in sacrifice is from us to God. They're opposite flows, and not easy to coordinate them together into a single homogeneous performance. But now let's think. If what I'm asking for is means to serve Him better, what is the real flow? I'll give you two examples. George is in the army. There's a battle going on. He's in the infantry, and he's shooting bullets at the enemy. And he's running out of bullets. So he sends back, bullet drop! 30 seconds. Helicopter comes over, and comes down, a big case of bullets with a little parachute. Thanks, guys! Right? He loads his gun, he starts shooting. Now, who's giving to who here? Well, the central command is giving you bullets, isn't it? Yeah, you're giving bullets to shoot at the enemy and win the battle. So what's the flow here? The flow is from the soldier to the army to the country. He's winning the battle for the country. He needs means to do it, but the flow is, I'm going to do more for you when you give me this stuff. So he's dedicated to giving more of himself with the more stuff that he gets. That's the idea that when we ask for means to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu better, we are offering ourselves in sacrifice to God. That's why. One way to see how prayer and sacrifices are really gestures of the same type, working in the same direction. Now, this is enshrined in Gemaras. Yeah.
What do you mean ourselves? What do you mean we're offering ourselves?
Well, if I say, I want X because with X I can serve you better, what I'm offering to do is serve Him better. That's what I mean by offer myself. I'm going to say, my life is dedicated to serving you.
Your time, your energy.
That's right, whatever I have. Whatever I have, exactly. We're coming to Rosh Hashanah now. There's a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah that says that on Pesach, second day of Pesach, we offer the barley offering, the Karban Omer, and on Shavuos, we offer the Shtei HaLechem, which is another kind of offering. And Sukkot, we make the water libations in the temple. And on Rosh Hashanah, we pray. Malchus, Chonos, Shofros, we pray. This Mishnah is a shortened version of a statement by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva antedates the Mishnah. And he said it like this. On Rosh Hashanah, on Pesach, the grains of the field are being judged. Take a sample of grain and offer it to me, so there'll be blessing on the grain. On Shavuos, the fruits of the trees are being judged. Take the Shtei HaLechem, okay, this is lechem, but that's fruit, I'm not going into that now. And offer it to me, so there'll be a blessing on the fruit. On Sukkot, the rains of the winter, the winter is the rainy season in Israel, the rains are being judged. Take water, pour it out on the altar, so that there will be a blessing for the rains of the year. And Rabbi Akiva continues, on Rosh Hashanah, say the various prayers in front of me. So now, let's think. Rabbi Akiva has a pattern going here. He has a formula going here. When X is being judged, take a sample of X, offer it before me, so there will be a blessing on X. That's his formula. It works for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Now he comes to Rosh Hashanah and says to pray. Is he following the formula, or is he breaking the formula? Is Rosh Hashanah also like the three major festivals, or not? The point of the Gemara is that it is. Because on Rosh Hashanah, what's being judged? We are. So according to the formula, if we're being judged, we should bring a sample of us and offer it as a sacrifice to God, so there'll be a blessing on us. That's what the formula says. We do that. Not with human sacrifice, but if prayer itself is a self-sacrifice, offering oneself to God, then you have an offering to God of the thing that's being judged, and that justifies a blessing on what's being judged. So this is all information about the idea that in the idea in prayer, you're offering yourself to God, And that now colors this performance of prayer when you're on this level, that it's not just that I'm dedicated to your service, but it's that I belong to you. I have no independent validity. I have no independent basis on which to stand. It's not yet the third, but okay. So one has to feel that. One has to experience that in terms of one's relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that context, and that will be how you pray under those conditions. By the way, I think that this is one of the reasons why in the morning and in the evening you say Kriya Shema and you daven, and you're not supposed to make any interruption. There are a number of reasons given for that. But I think one of the reasons is this. In Kriya Shema, one of the things that you do when you say the Shema is called Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim. And that means accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven upon yourself. And as is always the case with Chazal, you have to pay very careful attention to all the words. It doesn't mean recognizing that God is king, recognizing the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, acknowledging, admitting, affirming. No, it doesn't say any of those things. It says putting it on your neck. You're putting it on your neck. You're making yourself into God's possession. That's the self-sacrifice. Now, when you say the Shema with that in mind, don't interrupt before you go to prayer. That's the state of mind that you should be in when you go to the prayer. It's setting you up for the prayer. And that's one of the reasons why I believe there's not allowed to have any interruption between saying Shema and going into the prayer. So now, when you do this, there are certain applications that come out of this, which have to be taken seriously. I said that to know what you are, what to ask for is not obvious. You're all of you quite young. You may have had this experience already. If you haven't, I can predict that you will have it, where something happens, even something you expected, and you expected the consequences, and it turned out quite differently from what you thought. You were put to a sudden test, and you responded either much better or much worse than you thought you would respond. Or you got something that you asked for, and you thought it would have a certain benefit, and it didn't have that benefit, a different effect. What you learn is you don't know yourself perfectly. In fact, Lahavdil, one of the great philosophers, great American philosophers, Charles Sanders Peirce, said, the way you learn about yourself is to observe yourself just like anybody else, only you have lots more observations because you're observing yourself all the time that you're awake, whereas other people have 1% of what you do. But there's no magic trapdoor that says, who am I? What am I? Let me take a look inside, I'll tell you. Oh yeah, there I am. That's what no, it doesn't work like that. Ask a psychologist, they'll tell you don't understand yourself. I say they don't understand themselves either, and you can quote me. But there is no such magic trapdoor. So there are things that are going to be surprised. So now a cautious, careful, conservative person, of which I agree, would say, why do you go out on a limb and try to figure out what you need and predict what the consequences will be? Why don't you simply say, give me what I need. You know better than I do what I need. I'm asking you to give me what I need. Why take a chance? So first of all, we know that's wrong because the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the ones who set up prayer, gave us a text of prayer which is in detail of the categories of things that we need. And we are encouraged to put in our own personal, individual needs into those categories. So we know that that's not the correct outcome. But why isn't it the correct outcome? So here's one way to look at it. When there was prophecy, there were no questions like this. You would go to the prophet and say, here are my circumstances. I'm handicapped in this way. What should I do? What does God want me to do? And the prophet would say, God wants you to do X. And then I would do it. God put us in a condition of ignorance, which means we have to make decisions without knowing that the decision is correct. for whatever reason, that's the circumstance under which he wants us to function. So now, the rabbi said, we want you to ask in detail. What the rabbis are telling us is, make an investigation in good faith, take counsel from those who are wise, and then act on your decision, even though it might be wrong. And that means that prayer, in this respect, is no different from anything else that we do. I'll give you an example. I'm working, let's say, at a 50-hour-a-week, $100,000 a year job. I'm not. It's just an example. I hope we're getting paid tomorrow. And someone offers me a 40-80 job, 40 hours a week, $80,000 a year. What do I do? Well, if I want to serve God, I have to figure out which job is better for my service of God. So if I lived in the term of prophecy, I would say, which one does God want me to take? I don't know, but I have to figure it out because I have to make a decision. There's no way out of this. Either I take the job or I don't take the job. So I'm relying on my fallible investigation to decide which job to take. The message which I just gave you was deciding what to pray for is no different from making that decision. They're both practical decisions. When you pray for something, you're doing something to try to get it. What should you try to go and get? Well, the things that seem to be the things that that will service my service of God in the best possible way. This may be part of what is meant by the verb to pray in Hebrew, lehispalel. Rav Hirsch points out that palal in Hebrew is a root which means judgment. Plilim are judges. Lispalel grammatically would mean literally to judge yourself. It's a reflexive. When I first heard that early on, I thought to myself, okay, I follow the grammar, but what has self-judgment got to do with prayer? I mean, how does it come in? Okay, when I'm asking you to do tshuva, when I'm clapping al chait, I did something wrong. Okay, maybe so, but what about the rest of it? But now I understand much better. All of the petitions require self-judgment. And since petition is the essence of prayer, self-judgment is built into the process with its fallibility. But that's what. Now I want to mention one more thing. This is a chapter in my first book, first Jewish book, The Informed Soul. So there's more material there. Some people ask rightly if, as I said at the beginning, that petition and gratitude are both accompaniments to the petition part. I said it wrong. Praise and gratitude are accompaniments to the petition, showing that I know who I'm speaking to in our relationship and all the rest, and gratitude. Why isn't gratitude before the petitions? It should be praise and gratitude. I know who I'm speaking of, I know what our relationship is like, and I'm very grateful for all the things you've done for me. And now, please give me X, Y, Z. It seems to me that would be a much more logical way to go about it. I saw the answer to this in a shloh, which was brought down in a certain collection that I use. Every petition that you make is always answered yes. Every sincere petition is always answered yes. Oh. And then I saw that it's a Gemara, which I had learned 5 times before, but I never paid attention. And I saw the shloh, it often happens that way. See an application 1,000 years later, they say, oh, that's what that Gemara meant. When you take 3 steps back after finishing the Shemona Esrei, what are you doing? What is your position? What are you acting out? The Gemara has a very striking phrase. It's like a servant who received a gift from his master. Received, now! He went in and asked, and the master gave him a gift in his hand right now. So when I express gratitude, it's not because 6 months ago you did something for me, and I'm saying that I'm thankful to show you that I appreciate what you do, and therefore you should give me now. No, he gave me now! That's why we put gratitude at the end. Now, of course, I'll give you an example. I work for IBM, and I have a certain salary, and my salary has been constant for 3 years, and I think I deserve a raise, and I go to my superior, and I overlook my record, and evaluate and tell me, and he comes back in 2 weeks, it's July. And he says, you're right, we've decided you're correct. In January, you're getting a 14% raise. Do I say thank you now in July? Yes, I do. The money's not coming until January, so what? He said, yes, I know it's going to be paid. So every time you ask, there's so that's the gratitude. The gratitude that is that I was heard, I was taken seriously, and I was given an answer of yes. So then you walk into it thinking, who is this that I'm coming before? What is his relationship to me? What does he think about me? How does he care about me? To know that you're going to receive the feeling of gratitude should be there all the way through. And then when you come to give in modim, when you come to give word to the gratitude, that's something which should be a profound part of the experience. There's a little bit about how to pray based on understanding of what's going on in prayer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask if every time it's a yes, because it seems really interesting. At the times of the Amida, I try to concentrate as much as I can. And if I'm in a place where I've had a stressful day and there are lots of thoughts in my mind and I'm really trying to meditate that out of me and focus on those words, and sometimes I read the words and I think about something else, and does it still come as a yes?
Okay, so there's two things to say here. First of all, the very first introductory verse, which is before the blessings start, please open my lips and let my mouth declare your praise, right? That's where you're asking God for the ability to pray. I think that phrase, verse should be said thoughtfully. 2.5 years ago, my first wife died, and that was after a considerable time of illness. And some of the times were very stressful, painful, sorrowful. I'm learning the Daf Yomi. I've been learning the Daf Yomi for more than 40 years, 45 years. She actually put me into it. And there were days in which I said to Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm so upset, I'm so nervous, I'm so confused. I don't know how I'm going to be able to concentrate. Please give me the strength to learn your Torah. And it came. It came, astonishingly. I could sit for an hour and a half and would go through the daf, and that was all that was being in my mind. I don't know how it happened. I asked in desperation because I didn't want to miss a day, and he gave it to me. So that's number one. I think when you say Hashem Sfasai Tiftach, stop and think. I want this to be a real prayer. And then secondly, like the Ramchal says in the Derech Hashem, you are judged, evaluated, and rewarded, and/or the opposite, only on the basis of your effort, not on the basis of your performance. If you can say, I honestly made an effort, that's all you need. That's what determines it. In the Derech Hashem, he says it at least 3 times. So, if you say, I wanted it, I value it when it comes, and I tried, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. Okay, this is background for prayer. Yeah.
You compared judgment and prayer to judgment when making a practical decision. If I was making a practical decision, one of the things I would do is I would ask advice from someone.
100%. Prayer, exactly the same
So
thing.
If I'm praying for a bicycle, can I have a 2-part prayer where please help me to know if this is the right thing for which I should be praying, and please send me a bicycle.
Why? Why not do what you just said? Go to someone and say, should I pray for a bicycle? It's good for me. Do exactly the same thing. I didn't make this point as clearly as I should have, but praying is just a way of trying to get something. So think about trying to get it without prayer. Think about just going after it. There's where you would ask somebody and say, is this something worth going after? In exactly the same sense, you ask somebody, is it worth praying for? Because praying for it is going after it. Just more hashtadlus to get it. So it's all the same thing.
So is there any value in a prayer asking God to help me with my judgment?
Sure, but I would say the way to do it is to say, send me the right advisor.